بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. Just to follow on from yesterday we mentioned the first hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the intelligent person is he who prepares for death before it comes, and he does actions which help him after death. And also the qawl of Umar radiallahu anhu, where he said hasibu anfusakum qabla an tuhasabu. So today's narration, the first narration which we start with, is from Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu. He says, سمعت عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه يوما وخرجت معه حتى دخل حائط فسمعته يقول وبيني وبينه جدار وهو في جوف الحائط عمر بن الخطاب أمير المؤمنين بخ والله لتتقين الله ابن الخطاب أو ليعذبنك. So Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, he mentions the whole scenario, he mentions the whole scene, and he mentions that there was a day when I went with Umar radiallahu anhu and we were together, and then he went into a garden and he was on his own, so nobody knew he was inside the garden. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he entered into the garden and I heard him saying, and this point, the reason he mentions is that he was inside the walls of the garden. بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَهُ جِدَارٌ. There was a wall between us. He didn't know that I was there. This was between him and Allah himself. So essentially he was talking to himself. He was addressing himself, Umar radiallahu anhu. And he said, while he was there, that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he addressed himself, that Umar ibn al-Khattab, Amir al-Mu'mineen. Umar ibn al-Khattab, who is now the Amir of the Mu'mineen, basically the head of state, the Khalifa of the whole of the Muslim Ummah. Wallahi, he swore an oath, he said, I swear by Allah, la tattaqeen Allah ibn al-Khattab, that O ibn al-Khattab, it's pertinent, it's absolutely vital that you fear Allah, you have taqwa in Allah. Aw la yu'adhibannak, otherwise he will punish you. And this is how Umar radiallahu anhu spoke to himself inside the garden. And obviously this is the essence of what we all need to try and have some of in our lives, that we have some fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that what is it that Allah wants us to do, have we done it, are we doing it? All of these things should be assessed to some extent. And we know many stories like this where the Sahaba and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would address themselves, and especially with Umar radiallahu anhu, there's many stories like this where he would address himself and tell himself off almost in these kind of ways. Obviously with Umar radiallahu anhu, it's especially telling because we know that he is one of the best people ever to walk on the face of the earth after the Prophets. Him, after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he is known as the best person to ever have existed. And despite this, he would be very severe on himself. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions that لو كان بعدي نبيا لكان عمر بن الخطاب. If there was to be another prophet after me, it would have been Umar radiallahu anhu. When he became a Muslim, the takbir of him becoming a Muslim were echoing all around Makkah. After he became Muslim, it's when the Muslims could pray inside the Kaaba. Before that, the Muslims would not pray openly. They would all pray secretly. In fact, after him and Hamza radiallahu anhu, they became Muslim close to each other, then they both led individual groups or separate groups of Muslims, and they started giving open da'wah, which was the first time something like that happened. So he transformed Islam when he became a Muslim. Even in the early days of Islam, in the early times when Muslims were being persecuted and tortured in Makkah, he made lots of changes because of his courage and because of his heroism. People would think twice before attacking Islam, before attacking Muslims. So this is the difference he made right at the beginning. And then obviously we see after, when the Prophet in Medina, his advice to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, many a time we see, in fact there's a whole book written on this. I didn't think of this before, it just came to my mind now I think, where the Quran came and agreed with Umar radiallahu anhu. So there was a dispute or there was a mashwara, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would ask primarily Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Umar. And then the Prophet ﷺ, being very soft-natured, he would often go with the qawl of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, the opinion of Abu Bakr. And then many a time the Quran comes and gives preference to the opinion of Umar radiallahu anh. This is how much status Umar radiallahu anh has. And there's a whole book of the different incidents. I can't remember the exact number which this happens, but many a time this happened. Also, this is just still within the early parts of Islam, when even in Medina, when these kind of decisions would be made, and then he would have a very important say. In fact, people would describe the Prophet ﷺ, on his right was always Abu Bakr, and on his left was Umar radiallahu anh. And there's many narrations to this effect, where the main circle of Islam would go from these people. Also Umar radiallahu anhu, he's also known that after the demise of the Prophet ﷺ, and then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he supported him fully in his khilafah. But after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu passed away, when he actually became the leader of the Muslims, the effect he had on Islam then was again a complete transformation. Because of him, Islam spread in so many places, so much effort he done, and the taxes which he installed, for example, child benefit is something which he initiated. The police force is something which he also initiated at this time. So many things which were enforced throughout the Muslim lands, and we can continue talking about him, but that's not really the point. The point is that despite him having all of this status, all of these achievements, and all of this honor, he would still tell himself off like this. He would tell himself that if you do not fear Allah, then you will be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next narration, which is narrated from Khalid and Hassan radiallahu anhu, this is in his tafsir. He mentions فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالنَّفْسِ اللَّوَّامَةِ, and under this verse he says قال لا يلقي المؤمن ألا يعاتب نفسه ماذا أردت بكلمتي ماذا أردت بأكلتي ماذا أردت بشربتي والعاجز يمضي قدما لا يعاتب نفسه. So he mentions that it's necessary for every Muslim that he says ماذا أردت بكلمتي, and this is the essence of this, that every single word a person says, he should ask himself that why did you say this? What was the point of saying that? Was there benefit? Was there some kind of social interaction which happened because of that? Did it make people come closer together? Or was it a problem what you said? Did it make people go further apart? Did it cause disunity? Did it hurt somebody's heart? Was it something evil which you said? All of these questions, every single thing a person says, he should ask him. He says that the condition of a mu'min is that he should address himself, and he should ask that what is it that you intended with everything that you said? And ماذا أردت بأكلتي, even everything that you eat, he says you should ask that what is it that you intended with the things that you eat and with the energy that you gain from this food. What did you do with this? So this is also what we learn. And also he mentions after this ما أردت بشربتي, that even everything that you drink. So every single piece of energy that we get from the food and the drink that we have, according to this, he mentions that Hassan radiallahu anhu mentions that it's important that we ask ourselves every single time this happens, that what is it that we're eating, and why are we eating it, and what do we do with everything that we eat and the blessing that we done. But more important on this speaking part, we find many other hadith as well. In the Sahih of Muslim, he brings a hadith from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions that إن العبد لا يتكلم بالكلمة ما يتبين ما فيها يحوي بها في النار أبعد ما بين المشرق والمغرب. That sometimes the slave, he says something, and he doesn't actually think much about it. He doesn't give it much thought. And another narration says, لا يلقي لها بالا. He doesn't give it much thought. He doesn't think it's particularly a big thing, he said. However, because of that one kalima, the hadith says that that person يحوي بها في النار أبعد ما بين المشرق والمغرب. Because of this one kalima, he falls in Jahannam a greater distance than that between the Mashriq and the Maghrib, between the East and the West. So much importance is given to being careful about what we say, and how we don't just say whatever we feel like saying. We think carefully. And also one of the best ways to do this is muhasabah, is to, after we say things, at the end of the day, we think of all of our conversations, everything we said to other people, and we think that what was the point of these things, and did that benefit me, did that benefit the other person? And in fact, Hassan Basri rahimahullah, he also mentions a very similar thing under a different ayah, and these things are very, very common, that they would tell themselves off for the things which they would say. The next narration is from Qatada, who's also a great mufassir, and he brings it under وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. Under this verse, he says that when a person he does this, أَضَاءَ نَفْسَهُ وَأَسَى مَعَ ذَلِكَ أَن تَجِدَهُ حَافِظًا لِمَا لَهُ مُضِيئًا لِدِينِهِ. That when a person he extends the limits, he does something wrong, then he has to consider that he has essentially destroyed himself. He has to think carefully that what this thing which he done, this thing which he done which was beyond the limit, now this is something which it destroyed him. It was a complete waste of him. It's something which will destroy the things which he's trying to achieve in the world. And تَجِدَهُ حَافِظًا لِمَا لَهُ مُضِيءٍ. And in the future, by doing muhasabah, by assessing himself, in the future he'll find himself very careful that he doesn't do those things which are destructive to his deen. The next narration is from Hassan. He says that إن العبد لا يزال بخير ما كان له واعظا من نفسه وكانت المحاسبة من حمته. He says that every slave لا يزال بخير, he will stay on good as long as واعظا من نفسه, he addresses himself, and وكانت المحاسبة من حمته, and muhasaba, to take account of himself, is something which is actually something which he regards as very, very important. Min himmatihi is something he regards as very essential. So when a person regards muhasaba to be important, and he also is wa'idan min nafsi, he's always addressing himself, giving advice to himself. Very often we manage to find advice for other people, but here we find that it's important to be able to address ourselves. We look back on the day, we look back on the last hour, the last conversation that we had, and we see, was that thing right or was that thing wrong for us to say. And the final narration is from Maymun bin Mirhan radiyallahu anhu, and he says that لا يكون الرجل تقيا حتى تكون لنفسه أشد محاسبة من الشريك لشريكه. That a person, he will never become truly, he will never truly have taqwa until he is more careful with himself and cares more about himself, and أشد محاسبة, he takes more account of himself than another person would take of his own partner. So when a person's partner's in business and they're working together, he will be very careful about the accounts of him. He won't just let him run off with the business. He'll be very careful with this. Or a person with his wife, the way people deal with when we have in our words, when we have a partner, then the way a person deals with them very carefully. They don't just let them run off, because you've given them all these dividends. You let them have such a big say in your business. So the way a person looks after this, and another example is the way an employer will look at his employees, making sure they're doing the work properly, making sure they're doing the job properly. In the same way, he says that a person cannot get taqwa until he cares about himself more than this person. So just like if we employ somebody, we give him £500 to clean up our garden, we're going to make sure he does the job properly. We're not just going to let him walk off with it. And then we're going to go and check that if he's promised to mow the lawn and cut all the weeds, he's actually done it. So in the same way with ourselves, on a daily basis, if we promise to improve ourselves, become better, become closer to Allah, in Ramadan we aim to become better people, we assess ourselves at the end of that day and check whether or not we actually became better, more than we would check that gardener who's cleaned our garden, because we care more about ourselves than other things and about our money. So this is the last narration which we're going to mention today. And obviously the summary is that we see that these great people would always have this very high up on their list of things to do. Muhasabah was something which was pertinent to them, to always look back and think. And maybe while sitting here, alhamdulillah, on a daily basis, we get this chance because we're doing a book all about muhasabah. So we think, how my life is, how yesterday went, how Ramadan, so many, only, a whole week's gone now. We're going to be into the 7th day tonight. So much time has gone from Ramadan. So how has my Ramadan been passing? What have I achieved? What do I plan to achieve? So all of these questions we have to ask ourselves. We can't always obsess with other people. We have to worry about how we ourselves are spending our time. So I make that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me and all of us the ability to understand and act upon what has been said. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.